The Institute of Economic Affairs is a right wing think tank, one of those so called Tufton Street groups. I'm sure you know the name, the IEA, by now, sadly. Its free market evangelism and small state obsession have been beloved by such luminous figures as Liz Truss and I Crashed the Economy Kwasi Kwarteng. Its Director of Policy, Matthew Leach, has appeared on LBC, where fellow guest, comedian Dom Joly, had a few difficult questions for him.
Explain to me, I'm sorry, as a comedian, I'm not a professional politician, I know nothing. What is the IEA? I don't get it. What do you do?
Oh,
We're a think tank.
Don't even go there.
No, I'd love to.
We're a free market think tank.
And who pays you then? Who funds you?
We're paid funded by all sorts of individuals, foundations, corporates who believe in our mission. There's left-wing think tanks, there's right-wing think tanks, there's think tanks, all sorts of perspectives. We have an educational mission and purpose that we
Isn't what you're saying? It's the same thing as Liz Truss was saying yesterday. It's just she came back and just said, we had the right idea, but we just, it wasn't done right. All these great ideas don't seem to be done right. I don't get it. Has anyone ever done it right?
Has anyone ever done it right? Well, of course. Time and time again, we've seen throughout history as taxes are reduced, as we allow free trade, as we cut regulations, that people are freer and more prosperous. The UK had an extreme period of success post the Thatcher reforms into the 90s and 2000s. We had a much more successful, open economy. That you have to say that's surely a relative time of prosperity that came out of market-based reforms. I can give time and time again.
Liz Truss fail then?
Well, Liz Truss failed for her own reasons. Liz Truss tried to spend a lot of money as well as cut taxes without doing anything on the spending side. It was irresponsible. She tried to do too much.
Weren't you guys right behind her, though?
Liz Truss is Liz Truss. There were certain things that I supported.
But wasn't she there were certain
things like the energy price guarantee that my colleagues at the IEA
to be fair, the IEA were fully behind Liz Truss.
You were fully behind her, so I just don't quite understand why.
Well, I don't think that's true. We were behind certain ideas that we agreed with. We have to be clear, the implications of all this stuff about asking where the IEA funding comes from is that they don't actually believe what I'm saying, and that I'm just doing someone else's pudding. And I think that's actually quite offensive.
Exactly what I'm saying.
No, that is supremely offensive. You might disagree with what I say. You might have completely different views.
But then why would you not say who funds you?
The reason why we don't say it is because of basically, I'm going to be quite frank, people who disagree with us viciously on the internet, who will go and abuse and harass people who support us. If we publish a list of our supporters, they would go after and be attacked, including, by people like yourself who disagree with us. That's why we respect the privacy of our donors.
The question of who funds the IEA is a long-standing one. In the year to March 22, the IEA received £2.4 million in donations. It's reported to have received money from big tobacco, who don't like people attacking them online, the alcohol industry, oil giants, and the sugar industry. All of those, I'm sure you'll agree, are very vulnerable to a dogpile on Twitter. And just last year, the funding transparency organisation Who Fund You gave the IEA the lowest possible transparency rating. James, is the IEA's lack of transparency out of respect for the privacy of their donors?
Well, I'm sure, as Matthew Leach says, he genuinely believes something like this, but you have to look at the actual impacts of this. If you give a large donation to a political party, that's a publicly declared thing, and there are all sorts of reasons why people do that, and they circle around. Mostly, it comes down to sometimes it is actually just literally out of personal beliefs. A lot of the time, it is knowing full well that this gives you degrees of influence and sway, and perhaps nudging what a government or what a government to be might be doing. That's why you do it. If you don't want that direct route, another way to try and have that sort of impact on what's happening politically is to give money to a think tank. And so then that has the advantage that you don't need to declare that you're making this donation. You can still have the impact without all this nuisance of, as Matthew Leach says, nasty people being nasty about you. And this is pathetic. You want to live in a democracy, and you want to go around, whether it's you as an individual or you as a corporation, want to go around trying to shape how that democracy functions, because that's really what a think tank is there to do, and what the outcomes politically might be, and the sort of discussions we have and debates we have and what policies we get. You ought to be able to come forward as a basic democratic principle and say, this is what I stand for and this is what I believe in, and your name is next to it. Right? That just seems elementary, particularly if there's large amounts of resources and the potential to have serious impact on policy, which is what a think tank ideally is supposed to give you, is coming in here. So I just think it's absolutely nonsensical for Matthew to talk like this. There is another slight issue here, I think, that is, look, the IEA is influential on Liz Truss for sure. I mean, she's pretty much an alumnus of the institution in various different ways. Likewise, Kwasi Kwarteng. But right now, I'm more worried that there are other think tanks like the Institute of Fiscal Studies that are very centrist, very sensible, always turn to as the experts on the BBC and such like, that actually have been pushing austerity for a long period of time over the last 13 years. And where's the accountability for people like this? Where's the accountability for the sensible centrist think tanks? Not the obvious people who are funded probably by tobacco and BP and God knows who else, but the people who are sitting in the middle and saying, well, actually, we must do austerity. And what happens when Labour, presumably, get elected next time and suddenly there's another argument about, oh, well, look at all this debt, we've got to do austerity, and suddenly the Institute of Fiscal Studies pops up. That, I think, is also a problem, and perhaps we spend a bit too long chasing around after the IEA when there's this issue that we need to deal with as well.
I think that's a very salient point, James, and maybe Novara Media needs to do the NM guide to think tanks as part of its future content, supported, of course, by the lovely people at home like yourselves watching right now. Remember, if you want to help us meet our goal of getting 5,000 new paying supporters so that we can expand our operations for 2024, go to novara.media/support.